You know, we have some very interesting conversations with the sheriff during the commercial break, and this is a question that can I ask you this? What would you rather, be tasered or pepper sprayed? Think about it for a moment. Tasered or pepper sprayed? And I had actually asked you before, and because I wasn't sure, and I totally agree with your answer now. For you, it's a no-brainer.
Right.
Taser.
Right.
Because it hits you, but when that thing goes off, it's over.
Right.
Pepper spray lingers for quite a while.
And it has more. I mean, it's there's just, for me, there's no comparison. And you're.
Have you been pepper sprayed
yes.
as part of training?
Yes.
And tasered?
I was tasered a long time ago, not as a training tool, out at the police department with some friends, and we were
like you were being arrested.
Yeah, we were doing. No, I was not being arrested.
Okay, but you had tasered, but the pepper spray when you had it, it just burns the mucous membranes.
And it's been a long, long time ago too. There's better product, better as in more effective, and good, but there's just no comparison. I mean, its impact on you, you know, as a citizen or whatever. You know, it's messy, and it's the decontamination and all that's just a little different. And
so when you've used it sometimes within the context of your jail, both do you have tasers?
No.
Okay, no. Have you ever seen someone not really be affected because they're so hopped up on something from pepper spray? You'll blast them, and you're like, that's got to be burning, but for some reason they're so out of it, they're not stopping.
No doubt about it.
What is it? Because they're on drugs, or mentally they're just so wigged out?
Drugs 99% of the time. There's probably a handful of other cases, but I mean, yeah, we had people on bath salts, I remember a few years ago, and the police tasers weren't working in the streets. They made the arrest, they brought them to us. Eventually, I believe the individual died, actually. Over he had so much in him and a lot of stuff going on, and we couldn't control him, they couldn't control him. It didn't matter what you did, and that happens frequently. And unfortunately, you know, you've got the drug of choice is a big deal here as far as how hyped up the individuals are. But you don't know that when you're taking on someone, right? Coming into the jail system, into the booking room, and so if something were to, I've always told people this, that a person who's on drugs is out there in the streets and the police pull up, a lot of times they will ingest or swallow everything they have so they won't get caught, and they want to get high. And so then that effect of that is an hour or two later when they're now sitting in a booking room.
And then that's where it peaks. And
you can die quickly. We have a lot of overdose potential problems there. We have also the acting out of that. And so you're dealing with a person who could be at their highest point because they will ingest, swallow, smoke, whatever they can do as they're being arrested, taken out of their house or in the back of a car. And it's a very dangerous time. And so, you know, spray works, other things work, but it is the first 24 hours of incarceration is by far the most dangerous and the most, for us, most difficult. So
makes sense.
A lot going on.
Well, let's go to Joe, your buddy Joe. Joe, good morning. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Nick and Sheriff.
Good morning, Joe.
Just a couple of comments and a question. I'm sure you know, but for the general public, probably don't know, there's two kinds of tasers. There's a taser gun and there's a handheld taser. And the second thing is, what method do you use? Do you use just pepper spray, or do you all have handheld tasers also? And the third comment I'll make is, I don't think people realize in the incarceration system, prisons and jails, how many guards are injured by inmates. Some of them severely throughout the state of Tennessee. So I'd like for you to comment on that too.
That's great. Yeah, Joe's always right on. He's a couple things. We use a pepper spray. It's a product that we have, and there's new ones, you know, every few years and so forth that improve, especially the shelf life. That's one of the big problems with it. But yes, it is used. It is a type of force that we can use, non-lethal, of course, and I think it's very effective, very helpful, because obviously we do require all of our officers to go through being sprayed to be trained as an officer. There's a liability reduction in that, because if we're spraying our officers when they spray an inmate, clearly there's an understanding of it, and also we believe it's proof that it can, you know, we get sued oftentimes later on. Well, it did this to me, did that to me. The company is usually there with you helping, but also the fact that we spray all the employees that are using it helps us defend that.
Sure.
So, so there's that, and Joe brings up another point that I really think is from a society standpoint is underappreciated. The staff that work in jails, prisons, whether it's transport the Georgia officers that were killed recently, the Robertson County officer right out here, it is incredibly difficult work, and to find quality people is very tough. There are officers injured. It's a tough part of the job, unfortunately. You're dealing with, somewhere in the upwards of 100 inmates that don't want to be in there in a cell block. And it may be your assignment, my assignment, and we're trying to monitor all of those people, ensure, and a lot of them are still addicted and trying to manipulate drugs, and others are angry, and it's a very tough world. And to get a quality employee is tough. To keep them is very tough. It's our goal. That's our focus, is trying to find and keep the best employees, because it's a hard line of work.
It is very difficult, and not to minimize any of the difficulty in the training and the hard work these folks put in. But as I look at these cases, the one out of Coffee County, some of these others where an inmate somehow got hold of a gun, the one that happened over at 100 Oaks, I understand that sometimes things just happen, but I can't help but think that in these cases, somewhere there was a lapse in procedure. And no one's bringing it up, and I don't know this, and it's investigating, and officers have been hurt, and it's kind of like, well, why, come down on them when they've been hurt transporting an inmate? And I understand that, and we all I'll let down my guard and make a mistake on the job. So I'm not saying they don't, but I'm guessing in almost all these cases, in my mind, if an inmate you're transporting gets hold of a gun, there's something you did wrong. Unless you're just blindly, because there's got to be protocol to make sure, because that's what they're going to try to do. Am I right about that? And again, I don't know the details in these cases. Maybe they'll come out later, but I'm just guessing somewhere, somehow, some type of procedural step was missed, a mistake was made. And that's just my take from the outside looking in.
I think that's partly true. What I would add to that is, the Georgia case is pretty clear. They've come out with a report now where there were multiple violations of policies, and that led to the terrible, tragic death of both of these people. I would argue there's another side to that basically says, and it's true, the state prison system in Georgia, Tennessee, anywhere else, are so underpaid. Now look, that's not my operation. Our staff are paid much better. I'd love to see more. The requirements to be a correctional officer in this state of Tennessee, I've said this many times, President George W. Bush couldn't be a correctional officer. You can't have ever been convicted of anything. Now, I'm not saying we want convicted people, but a DUI when you were 25 years old, and I can never hire you to work in the jail. Now, your requirements here aren't that stringent. So my point is, why do we make and by the way, you didn't elevate the pay as a state when you did that. You raised the requirements to do it, but you didn't raise the pay. It is one of the lowest paid positions in the state government. So
what you're saying is, because of that, they're not able to hire enough staff to make things safe, so you have some of these guards or corrections officers working in a situation where they have no choice but to put themselves at some degree of risk.
You get what you pay for, let's be honest. Why would you sit and do that kind of work when you could go across here at a fast food restaurant and make equal pay and not have a gun at your side and be worried about it? So I don't disagree with the premise that oftentimes the thing that you left out that I always tell our staff is, yes, there are complacency issues that usually lead to problems. The other thing that you didn't mention that is very real, and you know this, it may not be me that forgot to restrain you. It was the officer who had a non-professional, more than professional relationship with an inmate that brought in a sack lunch that had a knife in it, that had a gun in it, that led to them pulling the gun on me. That's the other issue.
And that, by the way, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That you can't account for that. And that's one thing that crossed my mind with the 100 Oaks thing. There was a set schedule, it seemed, for this individual to be going to this clinic on a regular basis. He went into the bathroom, and in my mind, and we haven't heard, I thought, did someone know he's coming, and did someone plant something that he was able to, the screwdriver as a weapon, and he came out with that, and it was planted and waiting. Hey, if you're, I guess you can stagger the schedule, but if you're the correctional officer, how do you prevent that? So some things, trust me, I know, and that may be the case there where there was nothing they could have done to prevent it. And how far are you going to go with the resources you have, too? And it's not fair to them. It's just not, I hate it whenever I see any of them getting injured. It's just awful.
It is, and I don't disagree with you. You see where usually there's an issue or policy violation, things like that come up, but I still think we have to accept right now in this town, we will, and I haven't looked, but I promise you it's the case, we're taking someone for dialysis 3 times a week. Now, think about that. We don't get to tell them, and by the way, it's right close to here, where we take a person who is on dialysis in jail 3 times a week. He or she sits in a public room with other people who are the general public receiving their dialysis treatment. there's not a whole lot you can do unless the taxpayers are willing to say, let's bring the dialysis equipment inside of a jail system and provide that service. So what happens is we're putting the community at risk, really, because we're sitting in the public. We're also, it's a very difficult thing for the officers to do. They have to go to the restrooms, it's a predicted schedule. A lot of things make that very, very complicated. The average average person in Nashville doesn't understand that we have blind people, we have people with dialysis, we have people with prosthetics, we have all sorts of retardation, we have issues that make, it's not just jail.
I almost think, as we go to the break, that, you know, I'd look at the crime and I'd look, what's his medical condition? How bad's this crime? How much are we going to pay if we lock him up?
That's right.
We don't want to do that. I mean, obviously you can't. They're two separate things. But I'll tell you what, you're locking someone up for some minor offense, and everyone wants to lock everyone up, and he's going to incur thousands and thousands of medical bills because of some crappy pre-existing condition he has, and then you get to pay for it for locking him up. Hey, I'm all for putting him on probation and letting him stay out as long as it's not a violent crime. But no, everyone wants to lock people up. Think about it, because you're paying for it. We'll take a break. Be back with more of the phone calls. Brian, Ann, and others right after this.